Welcome everyone to today's masterclass. Just a few things before we get started. I wanted to let everyone know that this meeting will be recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel in case you miss any of it or want to share it with others. And we can have Emily put that link to our YouTube channel in the chat so you have that. That's where it will be. And we will be doing about 25 to 30 minutes of presentation and 25 to 30 minutes of Q&A. Please feel free to write your questions in the chat during the presentation, and we can ask those during the Q&A after. You can either write them in the chat or you can private message them to me, whichever you prefer. So with that, let's get started. Today's Connectpreneur Masterclass is Why Retire When You Can Rewire, Enjoying Life on Your Terms. This will be fireside chat style with the Connectpreneur CEO, Tian Wong, and best-selling author of Let's Retire Retirement, Derek Coburn. Along with being a best-selling author, Derek is also a financial advisor with over 20 years of experience helping high-performing professionals build lives they don't want to retire from. He is the author of Networking is Not Working, and like I said, Let's Retire Retirement, and also the co-founder of CADRE, which is an exclusive unnetworking community for CEOs and entrepreneurs. Derek is a passionate connector, devoted husband and father, and an advocate for rethinking outdated notions of success and fulfillment. So with that, I will turn the time over to Tian and Derek, and we can get started.
Thank you so much, Sky, and wanted to greet everybody and welcome. Hopefully we'll have a really fun and awesome discussion. We can make it interactive after we do our little fireside chat. And here's the book, guys. It's called Let's Retire Retirement. And hopefully Emily will put the link to order the book on Amazon. It is a 4.8 rated book already. It's a USA bestseller. And Derek, when this book came out, I mean, I've known you for a long time, so I knew that the book was coming out ahead of time. And thank you for the sneak peek. I was so excited to deal with the topic because of where I'm at in my age and my career. And so many of my friends are so-called retiring and moving out of the area and doing things. And some people, Matthew Lee, who many of you know, is like, I'm never retiring. I'm going to retire when I'm in my coffin, But this is a great topic conversation. I'd love to start by having Sky put up the first poll. Want to get a feel for what you guys think, how you define the term. And secondly, first question for you, Derek, is what inspired you to write Let's Retire Retirement? And also, what is the biggest misconception that you see around the sort of traditional idea of retirement?
Yeah, so welcome everyone. Thanks for having me, Tien and team. Really excited to be here and share with all of you. So yeah, I've been a financial advisor since 1998. And actually I started, probably having a conversation with my clients in early 2000s. I think it might've been after reading Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, where he briefly touched on this idea of mini retirements. And, I was doing something that I loved. I was interacting with clients who really enjoyed what they were doing. And I recognized that in our industry, we don't ask clients, do you want to retire? We ask you, what age do you want to retire? And pretty much everyone has opted into this idea, this framework, whether they realize it or not. I don't think they give a lot of thought to why they pick the number that they pick. And we start feeling like we need to sacrifice our health, our happiness, our relationships, and put them off for a time in the future in order to save a certain amount of money by a certain time. And what we're seeing now with like this unretirement movement, we have over 30 people in this country who have retired and now they're coming out of retirement because it's not what it was cracked up to be. They're not happy. It's not what they thought it was going to be. So I just want to help people realize and just pause and think about the idea. Do you think you're going to be happy sitting around doing nothing for 30 years? And if not, then let's plan on you having some income coming in. It doesn't have to be what you're doing now. You don't have to necessarily be working as hard as you're working now. But if you're going to have some income coming in later than what you're currently thinking, then that means you all of a sudden don't have to save as much. And that means you now have more money and more time than you thought you had that you get to spend on the people and things that are most important to you right now.
Awesome. And I know that your position as a wealth manager for many years has sort of given you a lot of insight into a ton of people. And I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs on this call for sure. And if you look at the poll results, we got about a quarter, a quarter, a quarter. Quarter want to pivot to doing work I enjoy on my own terms. A quarter want to focus on their health, hobbies, and family while earning, which is sort of a core part of your book. And a quarter will never fully retire, keep contributing indefinitely. I feel like I'm in that one quarter category, but
Yep.
you argue in your book, right, that waiting until a certain age, call it 65 or whatever, to start living is an outdated concept. What pivotal moments or data points in your work or in your thinking convince you that this model no longer works?
Yeah, look, I see, I have people that will come in over the years and I'll ask them, well, what are you going to do when you retire? And sometimes they'll look at each other, a couple, and they'll say, we're going to travel the world together. And I'll say, great. When was the last time you two went out on a date? More often than not, they look at each other and they have to think really hard about when that was. Or they'll say, we want to, really kind of take amazing vacations and trips with all the grandkids. Wonderful. How often are you home for dinner? Or I want to play golf 5 days a week, but then I'll point out that they hadn't been to the gym in 4 years and they just had their hip replaced. So when is all of this going to happen? And I think that by leaning in and prioritizing some of these things that ultimately people are suggesting are going to be a priority for them now is going to make it much more likely that they'll be able to enjoy those relationships and those activities once they get there. I talk a little bit about this this moment that I had as a father with my kids who are 15 and 13 now. When they were 10 and 7, my wife and I had a nighttime routine with them where we would alternate tucking them into bed, laying with them, saying a prayer, cuddling with them. And I noticed myself most nights wishing it would just hurry up and speed up so that I could get back to watching a show or hanging out with my wife or responding to an email. And then I also realized that my 10-year-old's probably not going to want his dad laying in bed with him for too much longer. And why am I wishing this phase to kind of speed up and hurry along? And I had this thought, and the thought was, what if like 20 or 30 years from now, there's a company that invented a time machine and they're offering all of us the opportunity to go back in time to experience one moment from our life. For me, what would I be willing to pay to go back in time to have one more nighttime snuggle, one more nighttime routine with the 10-year-old version of my kid? And for me, like, it's probably a much larger number, but I said $50,000. This was a $50,000 moment that I was trying to speed along, that I was taking for granted. And I started recognizing that there were other $50,000 moments that I was taking for granted. And I would encourage all of you to think about in your life. Like, I'm not cuddling with my kids anymore at night, but I'm working out with my oldest son. I'm sitting in car rides with my youngest son as we go between travel, soccer practices, and games. These are all times that I'm desperately going to want to have and want to appreciate over and over and over again. And I just want to lean into them and treat them like the valuable $50,000 moments that they actually are.
Yeah, I love the $50,000 moment concept. That was probably the favorite part of your book. I'd love to put up the second poll now and ask you a question that goes along with that. This second poll here is sort of, what's your biggest barrier to creating a life you don't want to retire from? And, it's interesting. And when I was thinking about this conversation, I was thinking, when we graduate from high school or we graduate from college, it's called graduation, but it's also called commencement, because sort of like the end of one era, the beginning of the next year, commencing life, let's say, if you're graduating for college. In your concept, if I could make an analogy, it's sort of like retirement, but you're not really retiring to a boredom, right? You might be retiring from the existing situation you're in and commencing a new life. But in your concept, the new life is much more than just say, buy the boat, buy the house, and go play golf all day. It's definitely staying active, working on your fitness, working on your income, right? So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, what your kind of the core thesis of your book, which is it's okay to keep working. You love your work. The money is also good because it affects how you look at sort of long-term financial planning, right?
Yeah, look, I'd love, if you think it's appropriate, I would love just to lean into the financial implications of choosing to work longer. So I have an example in the book, which I call a tale of two Tonys. And
Yes, yes. Let's do that. I also want to let everyone know that about 50% of our poll respondents, there's about 90 of you guys, say are answering question number one. Financial uncertainty, savings, income needs is the biggest barrier to creating a life you don't want to retire from. So yeah, this is very relevant, Derek. Go for it.
Yeah, and I have an entire chapter in my book with case studies about all of the various ways that you can make this work, whether it's continuing to do what you're doing now and not stopping, whether it's doing what you're doing now and slowing down, maybe pivoting to something else entirely, maybe taking a few years off and then kicking the dust off and leaning in. There's a lot of different ways that we can personalize this and make it happen. But what I'm most excited to share with all of you, and what I'm most excited to share with the readers, is just sort of how much flexibility it opens up for you by deciding and realizing that you're probably going to work a little bit longer than what society has told you that you're going to. And I'm going to share my screen right now to share a calculator with you that I have on my website. Can everybody see this? We're good? Tien?
Yes. Yep. Looks
All
great.
right. So what I have here is I have a 45-year-old who is planning to retire at 65. They're making $150,000 a year, and they have $150,000 saved for retirement. I'll leave the URL in here so all of you can go in at any point in time you want and personalize this for yourself. We have a lot of assumptions, the industry standard assumptions in here in terms of you're going to need 70% of what you are making now once you get to retirement. And then I also have the years of retirement income being 30 years, which is a fancy and nice way of saying I expect this person to pass away at the age of 95. So when we factor all of this in, Tony's financial advisor or this financial calculator that he's working with tells him in order to stop working at 65, he's going to have to save $2,390 per month, adjusted for inflation, every single month for the next 20 years in order to stop working. If you are like Tony, and chances are you're probably closer to Tony than not, it's a non-starter for most people. Look, if you're saving 20% of what you are making for retirement, it means that you are saving almost as much as you're living off of once you factor in taxes. So a lot of people hear this and a lot of people see this information and there's not really much that they can do about it, but they panic, they worry, they start missing more family dinners, they start sleeping less, they start skipping the gym, and there's not really anything that they can do to overcome this feeling of angst and this feeling like I'm behind and I don't know if I'm really going to be able to catch up. So here's what I want to ask all of you. I want to ask all of you what you think the difference is going to be if we decide to extend Tony's working years to 75 instead of 65. If you all want to just drop a number in the chat, it's $2,400 a month is what Tony has to save every single month for the next 20 years in order to stop working at 65. If he decides he's going to work till he's 75 in some capacity because he's not going to be happy sitting on his porch drinking lemonade for 30 years, what is that number going to be? And here's what it is. I'm going to let people type in. I'm changing the age to 75, and then I'm putting the years of retirement income down to 20 because then it'll be 75 to 95. The number goes down to $110 per month. The
Is
amount,
that assuming full-time, Derek?
Yep. So all we're doing is extending the amount of time that he has that he's going to work, and the amount that he saves goes down by 96%. Now, some of you may say, well, I don't want to work the way I'm working now until I'm 75. Maybe it'll be 70. If we make it 70 in this example, sorry, I'm scrolling in the wrong place here. We go ahead and make it 70 and we make the years of income 25 years. The amount goes down to $600 a month. So anybody that's feeling anxious, anybody that's feeling like the amount that they have to save is a little overwhelming, it's a little aggressive, and you feel like it's going to be hard to achieve this, even just extending your working years by 5 years reduces the amount that you have to save by 75%. So what I'm hoping to do here is I'm hoping to show you that as long as you think you're the type of person that's going to want to continue to contribute, that has skills, that has wisdom, that's not going to want to just sit around and not do anything, let's plan on this income coming in. And by planning on this income coming in, you now have more money and more time that you can spend differently. You can spend more time with your kids. You can go on more vacations. You can invest in trips with friends and family. You can go to the gym more. You can pay to hire that personal trainer. Whatever you want to do, I'm hopefully showing you now that you have a little bit more flexibility than you previously thought you had.
Yeah, no, this is great. And you can play with the numbers so that if someone wanted to say stop working full time at a certain age and go to you would basically adjust the household income if they wanted to work 50% of the time, right? And then you
Yeah,
can
exactly. And like I'm even now I'm just showing you one extra year, right? So if you remember the first scenario I showed you, it was he was going to stop at 65 and then have 30 years of needing retirement income. Here I'm showing him go to 66, one extra year. Now he needs the money for 29 years. And all of a sudden the number goes down by 20%. It goes from 2,400 down to $2,000 a month. We've all seen these articles. We've all seen people say that we should have saved more when we were 22 years old to take advantage of compounding interest. And we all feel kind of silly because we probably didn't do it. But even if we did do it, hopefully we're making a lot more money now than we were when we were 22 years old. But I don't see anybody talking about how we can achieve the same results and get the same benefits by just letting the money sit in here longer, because compounding interest, especially when the numbers are big, you don't need a lot of effort and you don't need a lot of time in order for it to have pretty big results.
Yeah, no, this is very eye-opening actually. And when I first saw this, I was like, wow, this is real. I wish someone had done this earlier because, you really do take the thinking away from sort of a binary, oh, I have to absolutely grind until this age, to I can do kind of a gradual slowdown, right? Or I can stop, or I can just keep going, hardcore for another 10 years. It's up to you how you want to live your life, I guess, right?
Yep.
Where does deferral of gratification come into all of this? I mean, what are the biggest mindset shifts that, people would need to make to get away from the sort of, oh, I got to suffer and then I'll make money, I'll be 70 years old and then I can go play with the grandkids or whatever. How do you get someone and most of the people on this call are, type A, hard charging, business owners, entrepreneurs, investors. How do you get someone like that to sort of open their eyes a little bit?
Can you reframe that for me?
Yeah. So, there's a whole concept, especially among baby boomers, about deferring gratification, right?
Mm.
Society has ingrained that in us. Like, it's not okay to like go out and get the big boat and do whatever, until you achieve a certain amount in your bank account or whatever. How do you help people who are sort of these hard charging type A entrepreneurs, many of whom are on this call, to sort of think in terms like it's okay, you can have it both ways, you can ease into it? How do you advise your clients or people that are reading the book to change their mindset?
Look, I think if you're a parent and you have kids that are still at home, it's important to recognize that society has told us that we should be working our hardest and earning the majority of our money during our years when our kids need us the most. And for me, my North Star, the primary filter that I run most decisions through is I want to show up every day and I want to make choices that are going to increase the likelihood that my kids want to spend more time with me when they're adults. And so that is something that's very important to me. I've invested a lot of time and money and energy into my marriage, into my relationship with my wife. Our retirement accounts are not the only things that benefit from compounding interest. And I feel like that a big part of this book and a big part of my message is I am in like the regret prevention game. I think that there are a lot of people that are just opting into the money game, opting into the acquired things game, and they're not giving it a lot of thought. And I think that there's going to be a lot of people that continue down this path who are going to wake up when they're 55, 60, 65 years old and have a lot of regrets, and they're going to have some money. They're going to be okay there, but they're not going to have the relationships. They're not going to be able to spend time with their family. There was a study done recently, and I share one of the charts in my book about how Americans spend their time and who they spend their time with over the years. And it showed time alone, time with a spouse, time with coworkers, time with friends. And And as you can probably expect, the amount of time that we spend by ourselves just goes up astronomically over time. It's like 150 minutes a day when we're 25 years old, and it gets up to like 350, 400 minutes a day when we're in our 60s. And that was the focal point of a lot of people sharing this study and sharing the information from the study. What stood out to me was the friend time. So when we are in our teens and early 20s, we're spending something like 150 minutes a day with friends. When my kids wake up, they're basically saying, who can I have fun with today? What are my friends doing? Let me see how we can all get together and enjoy one another's company. By the time we get to like age 30, it goes down to like 30 minutes a day. And by the time we get to like 40, 50 and beyond, it's like 15 minutes a day. We're basically having like an hour lunch with a friend once a week. And I don't know when we started deprioritizing friendship in this country. And we're spending a lot of time thinking about how much money do we need to have in order to retire by a certain age. And we're not spending enough time thinking about who do we want to retire with? Who do we want to like spend our time with? Who do we want to enjoy life with? And that's just one example of, I think, many that I talk about where once you get a taste of it, once you lean into it a little bit, I think it'll start having compounding benefits. You'll spend less time working while you're with your friends, but that time with friends will rejuvenate you and light you up and give you a certain energy to come back to work with, to potentially and hopefully be more productive than you would have been had you not done that.
A great answer. And do you think that the answer you just gave is the reason why your book is resonating with younger people? Younger being, say, people in their 30s and 40s, not just people like us in our 60s. Why is your book so popular with younger people that are historically 20, 30 years out from retiring?
Look, I think that it is resonating with them. And I think that I have a little bit for everybody in the book. I think that like the person that's going to benefit most from the full body of work is going to be the person that's in like their like 30s, 40s, 50s. That's got, that's really in it, that's working, that's got these other commitments, the family, the relationships, the friendships, all of it. Younger people, like people in their 20s. It's funny. I did a fireside chat with Daniel Pink for my book release party, and somebody asked what advice would I give to somebody in their 20s. And I was thinking about it, and it's like, that might be the one demographic, the one age group that I might say, like, don't like ignore what I'm saying about balance here, because I worked 80 hours a week, for probably, 5, 6, 7 years in my 20s. And a lot of the amazing things I have, relationships I have, and flexibility that I have right now is a byproduct of like just me going all in with work. And so I do think that depending on where you are and what your goals are and what your priorities are, the message could land a little bit differently. There's also this FIRE movement. I don't know if you all have heard of this, but financial independence, retire early, which is mostly made up of millennials and younger people in there. It doesn't have to be, but the primary demographic are people, I think, in their 30s. And the concept of this is like, let's work and save up as much as we can, and let's not buy lattes at Starbucks, and let's live in our parents' basement and do whatever we have to do so that we don't have to work and we don't have to be part of this system any longer than we have to. And I think that there's some people in the FIRE movement that are not leaning in all of the way. But my biggest problem with the FIRE movement is the buy-in is you're saying that like, I'm supposed to be doing something that I don't enjoy, and I should try to figure out how to stop doing it as quickly as possible. And I think if we can find work that we love doing and that we're passionate about, and maybe it's our calling, that's wonderful. I don't think that's going to happen for everybody, but at a minimum, let's find work and let's find people and let's find environments that we don't hate, that are not sucking our soul, because I think that we can still do work that we think is pretty good work, and it doesn't drain us, and it gives us the money and the flexibility to spend our time doing a lot of other things that we enjoy doing.
No, I mean, I love it. And we're going to open it up for questions in a couple of minutes. But Derek, before we start Q&A, I would like to ask you a final question, which is sort of like, what one takeaway would you like everyone on this call to sort of get, in terms of, and I know this is a very general question, but in terms of sort of how they can take a new look at their next 20, 30, 40 years, from I mean, you talk a lot about kids, family, friends, life balance, and it's all interrelated, obviously, to financial and retirement. But what one message would you like everyone to have?
I think it would be valuable for all of you to just think about how much time you spend thinking about picking the age that you want to retire. Because in my experience as a financial advisor, in my experience watching a lot of other financial advisors interact with their clients, it's not much. Most people say, you know, I haven't really thought about it. And their financial advisor will say, well, why don't we just pick 65? Because that's the age that some German chancellor picked in 1889 when retirement was invented. And FDR decided it was also a good number when he rolled out Social Security. And life expectancy at these particular times were 65 and 71 or so. And now we're living a lot longer. And so I think, you know, I don't think a lot of people have thought much about this. And I think people are making assumptions like the calculator that I shared with you earlier. I'm making assumptions, but I'm also calling out how ridiculous the idea of assuming all of the different variables is. Like there's a wonderful book that I read a long time ago called Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert. And it talks about how we as human beings do a terrible job of predicting what our future selves are going to want or enjoy. When we sit down to do our retirement planning and our financial planning, we have to pick inflation. We have to pick and accurately predict what the tax rate is going to be every year for the next 30 years, what our portfolio is going to earn every single year for the next 30 years, what it's going to earn after we retire, whether we're going to have any sick parents or kids that we're going to have to deal with, how many vacations we're going to want to take. And oh, by the way, what age are you going to die? And people walk around with the confidence, oh, I inputted all these numbers and I have to save $8,300 per month and I'll be able to retire. And it's like an 8-leg parlay on FanDuel, right? Like the odds of getting all this right is just minuscule, if not impossible. And so really think about like, how did I arrive at my numbers and how confident I am in them? And even more so, am I really the type of person that's going to be happy sitting on my front porch drinking lemonade, not doing anything for a long time? Because even working a little bit, you know, I've got a lot of clients who were attorneys that were making $2-3 million a year while they were working, and now they're making $150,000 a year. And that $150,000 a year is still providing them with just incredible flexibility with the way that they live, the way they spend their money, and the types of people and experiences that they're interacting with.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. I'd love to open it up to Q&A. Sky, do you mind running the Q&A? And
Yeah, no problem. We did have one more poll question I wanted to
let's
put
do
up.
that. Let's put up the third poll.
Yeah, so you can do that. So for this one, it's if you could rewire one area of your life today, which would it be? We'll leave this up for just a minute before we go ahead and start Q&A. I know we had a lot of people curious, Derek, about your calculator that you use, but I think we found the link and put that in the chat. So I think everyone should have that link in the chat. Just wanted to throw that out there now.
There we go. And
Perfect,
anybody that
thank
buys
you.
my book, you know, if you go to my website, you can email me and upload a proof of purchase, and I'll send you a companion workbook that I put together for the book that you can use while you're going through this. You know, I do have a couple of chapters later in the book that just kind of look at the numbers. You know, once, you know, even if you are somebody that knows you're not going to have a traditional retirement, have you adjusted the way that you are saving and investing your money, or some of the financial choices that you're making? Like, as an example, 401k plans became all the rage and still are arguably all the rage because of the idea that I get to put money into a plan now while I'm working and avoid paying taxes at my current tax rate. And then when I take the money out, I'm not going to be working. So I'm likely going to be in a lower tax bracket. So this is a great deal for me. Well, once somebody realizes that there's a good chance that they're going to be working maybe into their 70s, then maybe you're not going to be in a lower tax bracket. And maybe it's not as good of a deal as maybe instead putting the money into a Roth IRA right now. So there are just some financial concepts and some financial choices that you might want to think about differently if you have decided that you're going to work a little bit longer as well.
Perfect. And this poll is actually pretty interesting. I'll share the results with everyone, but it's pretty equally split for the most part, which is interesting. So I'll leave that up for a minute.
I have if I can just add on to this real quick.
Yeah, of
So
course, of
my
course.
last chapter is called Investing in You. And I just provide a variety of ways that I have spent the extra time and money that I have, knowing that I'm going to be working longer than most people. And I talk about how I go to how my workout regimen. I talk about how I invest in eating certain types of foods and certain types of healthcare, having blood work done more frequently. I talk about how I've spent over $200,000 on couples therapy with my wife. And if I would not have spent that money, I would probably have more money in my bank right now. But now I'm at a place almost 50 years old where the relationship that I have with my wife, because of the time that we've invested into each other, is at a really wonderful place. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing friends of mine who have relationships that aren't in that same place. And now I'm showing up, I'm creating, I'm offering value from a place of having a really wonderful and secure relationship with my wife. I talk about how I think that we're in the midst of a fun recession right now. I know that there's a lot going on in the world that a lot of people are concerned about, but I also think that we've forgotten that we're supposed to enjoy this thing a little bit more than I think we are sometimes. And when I ask a lot of people when the last time they had fun was, I get blank stares. People have to really think hard about, geez, I think it was a month and a half ago we went out to dinner with this other couple, and so I just want people to realize, with the extra flexibility that they have, they can spend their money filling up their cup in a variety of ways. And even though going to the gym more often, traveling with friends more often, investing in couples therapy, all of these things might mean less time at the office. What I will tell you is that the investment in those things and in yourself will allow the version of you that shows up at the office to more than likely be more productive and be a higher earner and a better professional, even though you're spending less time doing the work.
That's so true. Yeah, thank you for that, Derek. We do have some questions. I'll start out with the first one, which is what is your experience and your opinions on investing in property and homes in areas we will want to live and own during our retirement years?
Okay, great question. So I need to refrain a little bit from giving specific investment advice, but what I can tell you, I'll tell you one thing that hopefully will be helpful. So I've spent a lot of time in conversations with clients over the years, allowing them to share with me what they think they want to do in the future. And I'll let them start going on and on and on and talking about it without me interrupting them. And one thing that I find interesting, and I don't know if this person asking the question has kids or not, but my clients will say, we want to live here, we want to have a house here, we want to do these things. And I'll say, great. What if your kids end up living in a different part of the country or a different part of the world, and then you eventually have grandkids? Will you still want to live in this place that you are suggesting you want to live? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, well, no, I'd want to be closer to my grandkids. So when it comes to investing in property, when it comes to investing in real estate, I think it can be great, but I would also think about your kids. I would think about friends. I would think about the kind of travel that you want to do, and recognize that you might not have the flexibility that you would like to have to sort of manage and run these properties if you're not going to be there as often as you may think you're going to be there right now.
Okay, thank
Hopefully
you.
that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, they did ask for your opinion, so this is just your opinion, right?
Yeah.
So it's great. Um, in the case of a person who is healthy, active, financially independent, has hobbies, but older, how do you find useful work other than advisory and investing that generates income and value?
I think that this AI movement is happening a lot faster than a lot of people thought it was going to happen. And I think that there's going to be a lot of turnover in the job market over the next couple of years. And I think, even though that sounds kind of frightening, I think one thing that we are significantly underplaying is just how responsive and how adaptive human beings are, and just how much more flexibility and time we'll have to maybe think about business opportunities, ways to make money, ways to contribute if we think back 15 years from now or 15 years ago, there are a lot of jobs that exist now that just we hadn't even heard of before, like Uber driver, Instacart delivery, social media marketing manager. I heard Gary Vaynerchuk say the other day that there's an app that's come out that you can pay people to go on walks with you that maybe have similar interests or similar topics or hobbies and things that they want to talk about. I half jokingly but half seriously mentioned in my book that I thought like maybe like a rent a granddad business could be like a cool idea, as someone that never had a grandfather myself, that you pair up grandparents in senior homes that don't get a lot of visitors with kids who don't have grandparents. This would be supervised, of course, but like give everyone an opportunity to maybe share some of their gifts and their wisdom with each other. So whether it's masterclass, whether it's like taking online courses or training, like I personally just signed up for like a 30-day AI course, and I'm taking with my kids to learn more about all the different programs that are out there. I think just leaning into being a lifelong learner and seeing what resonates with you, what lights you up, what makes you feel good, I think is just one way to guard against this and to put yourself in a pretty good position to be available and to earn some money no matter which way the market goes.
And that's great. Thank you. And then before we get too far, someone wanted to follow up on your answer on retirement properties, and they ask, what are some of the various investment vehicles such as Roth IRA, Mega Roth, and REITs for such things, and what is your experience and advice with that?
Can you say the first part again, or show me where this is?
Yeah, no problem. So it's from Greg Jackson in the chat, and they're just wondering basically what is your opinion on things such as Roth IRA, Mega Roth, and REITs
Okay, yeah. So
for
real
investment
estate
properties.
investment trusts.
Yeah.
So look, I mentioned the 401k plan and the concern that I have, and the reality is I do not think a Roth IRA is better than a traditional IRA. And for those of you that just to make sure we're all on the same page here, a traditional 401k, a traditional IRA, these are accounts that you put pre-tax money in now, and you're going to pay income taxes when you pull it out. A Roth is you put in after-tax dollars now, and when you pull it out, you don't pay any taxes. I am not a fan of one more so than the other, but when I look at a lot of people's portfolios right now, if we were to project out the value of the various accounts that you have and divide them into three buckets, we've got pre-tax money, we have post-tax money, and then we have capital gains money. A lot of people are really overdialed and weighted too heavily, in my opinion, towards the pre-tax investments, where look, 80% of the money that they have is going to be subject to income tax when they pull it out, and they're going to have to start taking it out once they turn a certain age because of required minimum distributions. Look, we are historically right now close to being the lowest that we've ever been in terms of income tax rates. There's not a lot more room for it to go down. If we end up in a political environment over the next decade or two where we're bouncing back and forth between one extreme or the other, maybe like socially we go in a different direction, but then that also means that the income tax rates are going to go up. I want flexibility. And so I'm a big fan of looking at how you're diversifying the way your money is ultimately going to be taxed. I think that should be as much of a priority as looking at the way you're diversifying your money between different asset classes.
Amazing. Okay. Can you tell us more about how we can use our current income to invest with our work income for tax deduction purposes and things like retreats for yoga, meditation, holistic health, etc.?
Maybe like some of these are going to be eligible for HSA if you have an HSA account, which is an account you can put money into on a pre-tax basis to use for health and wellness. That would be like, just based on the question that you asked and what you shared, that's probably the best way I can answer that now. I'll also say too, if anybody wants to email me anything specifically, if you don't want to ask a question that is too specific or personal for you, then I'm happy to provide my contact information, my email address for those of you to shoot me an email.
Perfect. Thanks, Derek. What about bootstrapping and managing a startup funded by my IRA instead of just retiring?
Sure.
I guess the question is like, what do you think about that? Is that a good idea?
I mean, look, I mean, in general, I think it can be a good idea. I mean, but I'd want to know more about the company. I'd want to know more about your involvement. I want to know more about your ROI. So again, like, I feel like I would need a lot more information, I think, before I could say, I think that's a great idea for you or not.
All right. Okay. So maybe that person can email you with some more specifics.
Yeah,
Would be awesome.
I just dropped my email in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Someone is curious, going back to, you said you're taking AI course. They're wondering which AI course you are taking.
It begins with a C. Coursive.
Coursive.
COURSIV. But I just started it, so I can't say whether I
Can't give an
recommend
opinion
it
on
yet
it
or
yet.
not, but yeah.
Okay. I put that name in the chat for everyone as well.
Yep.
Thank you. How might we prepare from super intelligence and a possible 20% year growth rate?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question.
And I read that and I'm like, maybe you'll understand. I'm like, does 20% a year growth rate? Maybe if you could
I'm not going
rephrase
to
the
be able to
question, that
give
would be great.
anybody specific financial advice or recommendations here. So if the questions can maybe be like more broad and maybe more applicable for the majority of people on the call, that would probably be best.
Yeah.
I just like my
That's-
current licensing, and I mean, you guys know that, probably know the drill. Like I'm just prohibited from giving really specific investment advice here.
What advice do you have about funding a new startup or business? It's challenging and almost impossible to get a loan or funding due to ageist stereotypes.
I think,
Yes.
ageism goes back a long way. Going back to even before, like, the era of Social Security when it was starting. They were one of the main reasons why Social Security was invented is we were having an unemployment crisis in this country because the older workers didn't want to give up their jobs. And the employers were looking at the older workers and almost wishing them to make mistakes or to screw up so they would have a reason to get rid of them. They would start showing gray hairs and they would get assigned more difficult jobs and tasks to increase the likelihood that they would fail so they could bring in more younger workers. And funny story, the older workers, they would go to like Woolworth and buy shoe polish and rub it in their hair so that they wouldn't appear to be getting older, so they wouldn't fall victim to this, game that they were playing. So ageism has been around for a while, and I think that we're going to see a big shift in the very near future because there's not nearly enough people coming up behind this generation that's approaching traditional retirement to take their place. And so we've got a lot of law firms and consulting firms and government that are having mandatory retirement ages. And I think that a lot of these organizations are gonna change their mind about this. I think that more and more opportunities are going to become available for people that have wisdom and experience to share. There's a friend of mine named Chip Conley who wrote a great book called about midlife, and he's got a business and an organization right now called the Modern Elder Academy, which is for people in their 50s and 60s that sort of have gotten to the place where they were supposed to stop working and they're realizing it's not all it's cracked up to be, and they're wondering what's next. And so he's created a program and an opportunity to help people lean into what this might be for them. But in his own personal experience, Chip Conley owned 40 boutique hotels, sold them, made some good money, retired in his 40s, and was sitting around and got a call from the CEO of Airbnb. And the executive team at Airbnb at the time, they were all young guys and gals who knew the tech, and they saw what was happening. We saw what happened with Uber, right? By having a lot of young, inexperienced people sort of at the helm and making some mistakes that ended up hurting them for a little period of time. And they said to Chip Conley, like, we don't have anybody here with gray hair or wisdom, and we want to hire you to be our chief wisdom officer. They called him the chief operating officer, but it was really the chief wisdom officer. We we see the value in hiring someone that has the experience that can guide us and lead us and prevent us from maybe making some mistakes that we would make otherwise. And so I would just say that I think that maybe the money will be coming. I think that you could look at some of your investment accounts that you have right now. One of the ways that you can create more flexibility for yourself, knowing that you're going to be working longer, is you can take more swings and take more chances and take more risks. And maybe like before you didn't feel like you could afford to borrow some money from an investment account, knowing that you were going to stop working 6 years from now. But if you decide and have a shift in your mindset that you're going to work another 15 years, then it's not going to hurt you as much if that investment in a new startup doesn't work out, because you're still in the game and you can continue earning money and maybe lean into other opportunities.
Okay, perfect. And I think we got a little bit more clarification on that other question. I don't think it's too niche, but
Okay.
it was saying that how would you prepare for 20 years of saving and 20 years of inflation by the time you retire?
Yeah.
So I think the question is, so you're planning for 20 years of saving, but you also kind of have to plan for that inflation within those 20 years. So what's the best way to plan for that, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So I'm not sure if this is the question, but my calculator has an inflation factor that you can include, and I use 3%. I'm worried that 3% might not be enough. I'm worried that our government has printed, over 35% of all the dollars that are in existence over the past 5 years, and that might catch up with us at some point. But yeah, I mean, I always factor it in, but I think it's another one of those line items, like how short can we really be? And what happens if we're planning for 3 and it ends up being 6? What does that mean in terms of how long we have to work or how we're able to spend our money? And so if I were being conservative, I would probably lean more towards like 4 or 5% inflation and hope that that's maybe overdoing it a little bit. But 3% is typically been the historical number that's allowed you to come close to accurately predicting what you're going to need to save in order to end up with what you want.
Okay. Um, the next question is, why do you think we're struggling so much to leave behind the industrial age thinking and mindset about retirement at a set age? They say we're advanced so much on other fronts with technology, ease of starting businesses, yet this 1930s, 1970 playbook just won't land in the dustbin where it belongs.
Let me see. I see this question here. I think that part of it is, it's a series of things that people have done. There's been a lot of conformity. There's been, starting in the 50s, it's been, look, if you go to school and eventually go to college and you buy a home and you go and you work for this company, then we're going to provide you with this. And these things are going to be available to you. And more so, it's just not turning out that way. It's not, we're seeing it with younger people too. We're seeing it with younger people who are going to school, they're going to college, they're going to graduate school, they're getting good grades, they're doing everything that they were told to do. And now like AI is taking a lot of the jobs that I think were going to be reserved for them. So they're like just doing things a certain way for as long as we've done them. It can be really hard to change gears, really hard to shift. I mean, I have clients who are in their 70s who have retired for all intents and purposes. And, one bucket of them are still working and they're still earning an income. And another bucket of them is not earning an income at all. And I'm really amazed and fascinated to see how much more easily and in how much more of a carefree way the people who are still earning an income are able to spend their money. They're giving gifts away to their kids. They're planning amazing vacations. The ones that have enough money, they're not going to run out of money. I tell them multiple times a year, please spend more money. You're like, you can't take this all to your grave with you. But because they turned off the knob of income and they're only taking money out of it, it's a harder psychological barrier to overcome, I think. So I think that the more we start investing in some of the things that I think we ultimately know we're going to want to do anyways, the easier it's going to be for us to maintain those hobbies, interests, passions, and relationships.
Perfect. Thank you. What is one small change that you can recommend to people to make within the next year to start rewiring?
You know, I want to share with you a couple of questions that I walk my clients through over the years. And I say clients, I'm not really actively practicing my wealth management practice anymore. I sold my practice to a private equity company. So there's no sales pitch here. I don't want anybody to think that I'm, looking to get new clients. But I did walk them through a process that I call the alignment audit. I have more about this in that workbook that I mentioned to you as well. But there's 3 questions that you can answer that will help you determine how much you are living your life in alignment with what's really and truly important to you. The first question is, if you were to win the lottery this weekend, or you were to receive an inheritance of $50 million, would your life change? And if so, how would it change? This is a great question to reflect on and think about to help you determine, am I doing the work right now that I truly love doing? If all of a sudden I had a lot of extra money, would I still be doing this? Would I do something else entirely? Would I be, treating myself to different experiences or things that maybe I don't have right now? Question number 2. You meet with a doctor and the doctor tells you that you have 1 year left to live. How are you spending the next year? Question number 3, the same doctor tells you that you're actually going to die tomorrow. What would be your biggest regret? So those 3 questions, if you were all of a sudden come into a big windfall, if you all of a sudden only had 1 year left on earth, and if you all of a sudden found out that you weren't going to make it past tomorrow, what would your biggest regret be? The answers to those questions can be incredibly instructive in helping you determine what are the next things that I want to be doing in my life.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. The next one would be, how does your approach differ from simply semi-retiring?
I'm not sure that it does. I think semi-retiring is an option. I think that I am in a little bit of a semi-retirement right now myself, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. My kids are 15 and 13, so that means I have 3 and 5 years, respectively, until they leave the roost, assuming that's what happens. If there was a study done by a guy named Tim Urban, he's got a great blog called Wait But Why. He says that if you have kids who, when they go off to college, if they leave town, they go away for college, that the day they leave, you will have already spent 93% of the time that you were going to spend with them over the course of your life. 7% is all we have left. Look, if you are in your 40s and 50s and have parents that are in their 70s and you're seeing your parents twice a year, have you done the math? Have you realized that maybe you're going to see your mom 20 more times or 24 more times? Or how many more vacations you're going to take? And so for me, I'm in a phase right now where I'm working some, but I'm not aggressively working hard. I'm working about 30 hours a week. I'm only doing work that I really enjoy with people that I really enjoy doing it with. I'm doing some speaking around the book. I'm doing some coaching around the book, but not a lot, because my priority is I lift weights and work out with my oldest son 4 times a week. I'm spending a lot of time with my younger son. I don't want to compromise these things. And so all of this, the fact that I'm spending more time with my kids and my wife and my friends and probably most people in my shoes, it's sponsored by me knowing that I'm going to be turning it up a notch 5 or 6 years from now. So I'm on a little mini hiatus. I'm still in the game. I'm still working. I didn't take a sabbatical. It's not like I'm completely out of the game, but I think that there are just a lot of ways. And again, I highlight probably like 7 or 8 different case studies, different ways that you can make this work for you in the book. But yeah, I'm really excited to be in this period where I get to show up and do some things now. But when my kids are gone, sign me up for 50-hour weeks 5 years from now. Sign me up for more earning, sign me up for more impact, sign me up for more growth. And knowing that income's coming really is what gives me the flexibility and the freedom to spend as much time with my family and friends as I do right now.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. I know we have time for probably 1 or 2 more questions, but do you have any ideas of possible overlooked income sources that people can tap into to support your new model of this rewiring?
Look, I think that that our ability to earn an income and our ability to have a desire to earn an income, our ability to continue to develop and maintain the skills that companies and people will want to hire for in the future is by far our best asset. Again, once that stops, our flexibility goes away. So for me, it's less about what can I invest in. Look, I hired a personal assistant before I ever put a dollar in in my 401k plan as a 24-year-old, and I was in that business. You know, if you have a business and you can invest your money into your business, you can invest your money into developing new skills, new talents. Like, I'm all for that. Like, you have a lot more control over the outcome of what that return is going to be than what you're going to get by investing your money in the stock market or anything else for that matter. So I'm just a big fan of just continuing to show up and find ways to be useful and find ways to be hireable and find ways to add value to the world. And you know, I think that's gonna, as long as you have that, then I don't think you're gonna have to worry about money.
Okay, great. And this one last question. Do you think that experimentation or things like side projects can play a role in this rewiring?
Yeah, big time. You know, so I'll share my personal experience and I'll share another story. My personal experience is I had just the financial services business. I started in 1998. I grew it pretty effectively, mainly by cold calling and going to networking events. And I got to a place where I had 300 clients, and I was looking around at other financial advisors who were, you know, 10, 15, 20 years older than me. And they all had like 2,000 or 3,000 clients, and they all pretty predictably did not like working with 80% of them, like the good old 80-20 rule. And we're very limited in terms of the way that we're able to attract and market, and still are to this day in that industry. Like, you can't use testimonials. So for me, I went from 300 clients down to 75 clients, and then used the extra time and energy that I had to start CADRE, to start this community to serve CEOs and entrepreneurs. And having two businesses going side by side at the same time offered this tremendous ancillary benefit that I had not really planned for, or it wasn't what I was expecting. And that is, I got to really stick to my guns in terms of who's a good client and who do I want to work with, in a way that I don't think that I would have been able to if I had just one business. So I was able to say, like, you know, you seem like a nice person, but you don't share my values, or you don't fully agree with everything that we're doing here. I'm not going to make an exception for you. And knowing that I had another business that I could fall back on, knowing that I didn't need the revenue from just one source to fund my kid's 529 plan, allowed me to be really selective about who I was going to work with. I'll add on to that Adam Grant, in his book Originals, tells a story of an interaction that he had with the founders of Warby Parker. And they approached him right away to invest in Warby Parker while they were all still in school. And Adam Grant said, look, you guys are not all in on this business, so I'm not going to give you my money. They came back to him a year later. They graduated. One of them was going all in on Warby Parker. The other two got jobs at consulting companies. And Adam Grant's saying, like, no, I'm not going to give you my money. If you're not going all in on this, then I'm not going to, you know, give you my money to play around with. And then he says that, of course, was probably the worst financial decision that I ever made, not investing in Warby Parker. And it led him to look into some studies that were done that showed that while entrepreneurs are often labeled as being great risk takers, the good ones are actually very good risk mitigators. And they divided up two different groups of entrepreneurs who went all in on a new project, a new job, a new business. They left the one that they had. And then another group of entrepreneurs who maintained their job, maintained their business, maintained another source of predictable income while they started this new thing. And the second group, this latter group, was, I think, 30 or 40 times more likely to succeed than the other group, because they had something to fall back on. They didn't have to take risks. They didn't have to work with people that they didn't want to work with. And so I think side hustles are a huge part of this. And I wouldn't be quick to leave whatever you're doing now. I would leverage the fact that you've got something coming in, as long as you don't hate it, as long as it's not a toxic environment or, doing work that you can't stand, keep that and use it to slowly build up this next thing that you want to do in a more meaningful and predictable way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Derek. And of course, everything you've said today, I think has been helpful for not only me, but all the people in the masterclass. And I do want to let everyone know that I put the link to purchase Derek's book in the chat. I put the link to his calculator that he used in the demonstration. And I also put the link to our YouTube channel, which is where this recorded masterclass will be, and you'll be able to find it there. The only link I might be missing, Derek, is someone asked if there's a link to get the workbook.
I just dropped in the URL. Yeah, I just dropped in the URL to take you directly to there, where you can just go right to, if you've already bought it, just go right to step 2 and then just like do a screenshot and set up to be all automated, and my team will get your proof of purchase and then send you the workbook.
Perfect. And then if someone's wondering, is there a book available for Audible? Is that on Amazon as well?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
And I read it. And those of you that are on this call today, you see that I talk a little quickly. I think I talk faster than most people. So I intentionally slowed down while I was recording the audiobook, knowing that most people like to put it on 1.5x speed while they're listening. And I went back to listen to my recording, and I think I sound ridiculous at like just regular speed. So, but I think I sound amazing at like 1.5. So just be sure if you grab the audiobook to like speed me up a little bit.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that's good info, I guess, to have for those people. Okay, great. I see quite a few people have already purchased the book after this session. So I'm sure Derek would love some feedback after reading it. His email's in the chat. And Derek also, like you said, put the link to order the workbook if you'd like that as well. But with that, I think we will wrap this up today. Derek, Tian, thank you so much. This was super informative. Derek, it was awesome to have you here today. And if anyone has any further questions for Derek, feel free to email him, like he said, with more specifics on your situation or questions that you might have. But we
covered a lot. We covered a lot, and this was amazing. And there's still so much that we didn't even talk about. So happy to answer more questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Derek, and all the team. And we will see y'all later.
Thanks, Skylar. Thanks, Tian. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Much.